Yes, absolutely.
Hello, Pandoranauts. This is your host, Paul Cradle, and this is your other host.
Miles Gray. Welcome, Pandooradom. This is the next episode of Pandooradom.
Yes, a
Good to
much
see you, Paul.
awaited episode. And so we'll just start right off by asking Miles Gray what's been going on in his neck of the woods.
Absolutely. So, I'm sure that many of you already know, are hardcore watchers of the channel, that I'm in a particularly difficult part of the world at the moment. And we've experienced some pretty crazy events in the last few days, especially. Although we deal with this sort of thing commonly on some scale, but the scale of it in the last few days has been really probably beyond what most people are used to, even here, where people are total veterans of having to deal with these sorts of things every single day. So, Paul, do you think I should get specific about this, or should I leave
Yeah,
it
well,
not too?
what what were you afraid of yesterday that was keeping you up, or last night?
Yeah, well, I mean, the backstory is that for many, many decades, we've lived with um, thousands of incoming rockets, but they're pretty dinky. I mean, that's a kind of an absurd thing to say about a rocket, but they're kind of dinky, they're kind of homemade, and though they're scary, they're not too scary, and you get pretty used to them. They're kind of like flies. Now, I don't, I'm being facetious because in reality, they can still kill you. So you don't want to be caught outside when they're flying. A siren goes off and you need to head for, cover in some sort of shelter or other. And that's the case with most of the incoming projectiles from various forces that are against us, that they are deadly. But if you take cover in a strong enough fortified room, you're probably going to be okay. However, the most recent situation in the last few days, though we had a taste of it last year twice, because that was the first time that we ever had a direct form of combat, as far as we know, between us and that nation, because prior to that, it had been using proxies in its war against us from numerous terrorist groups that surround us in the countries that border us. So this was the first time that it exchanged actual direct fire with us. Even though, so we're separated by several countries, so it's not exactly easy to fly from one to the other.
Oh,
Um, so in any case, this was something that was being threatened though for a very long time, and it had never come to pass. And then it finally did come to pass twice. But most of those that it was quite a display last year, the two times, because everybody thought this was going to be, like an apocalyptic scenario, or not everybody, but I mean, a lot of people didn't know what it was going to look like when this long threatened event was going to look like. And then it finally happened. And honestly, it was kind of anticlimactic because the grand majority were just shot out of the sky. They were intercepted before they even hit. And there were a very tiny minority that did. And there was, I think, one Bedouin girl who was injured. There may have been some other as well. But ultimately, it was pretty pathetic, sorry, not pathetic, that it, not pathetic,
oh.
but as in Bathist, like it was anticlimactic.
Speaking
Um,
of pathetic things, I actually had to look
yeah,
up a map of the Middle East just now to confirm that Iran does in fact not border Israel.
yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
think it did, but I didn't know.
But no, but it's actually what you just did
Well,
is so
see,
awesome
actually,
though.
I,
What
I
people need to be
after the
doing.
fact, I can say I knew that it didn't. But if asked directly, I would have to admit I'm not sure, but I can't say now because I can't tell how much I would be cheating by post fact of knowledge. So anyway, like
Well,
I,
but it's
maps can be
excellent.
embarrassing. I used to study them a lot as a kid, but something embarrassing happened to me with maps one time. If I may digress just a little bit,
Yeah,
I
go ahead.
accidentally identified Hainan Island as Hong Kong because
Wow.
I
That's
couldn't. I did actually on a map, and then somebody treated me like I was really stupid from then after. But in my defense, well, I don't really have any defense, honestly. I just didn't study the
I
area
mean,
enough. And see, but the thing is though, that a lot of very intelligent people can make simple mistakes like that, or
of course.
horrible mistakes like
I
that,
think
if they just didn't look carefully enough. So
I
so
would
after
have
that,
hard.
I take less stock in these things that say such and such percent can't identify such and such on a map. I'm like, well, you know, just look at a map then. You know?
Yeah.
It's like,
Well,
anyway, maybe I'm in
but
just
it's
an idiot. Anyway,
no, I really
but
don't think that's the case. Well, I really think
but anyway, yeah. So the thing is that you're in Israel. It does not border Iran. You've been attacked. You've been safe. Obviously, you haven't been injured. Neither has your family. But you have gone to another location, haven't you?
yes, we have. So, I mean, the way that this happened is, the backstory is very, very long. Um, and, here we've been dealing with, like I said, decades long attacks from surrounding neighbors that are proxies of Iran. They're basically terrorist groups that work either on behalf of Iran or they are funded by them to some degree, or they have some sort of alliance. I mean, it varies by group, the degree to which and the nature of the actual alliance between them in Iran, but they all have a common goal, which is to destroy Israel. Um,
Mm.
just a moment.
Well, it sucks to have people want to destroy where you are. Most Americans don't know what that would be like, myself included. I mean, here I am at some risk with geopolitics, well, mostly religious. I guess in your case, it's also religiously driven. But
Yeah, that's a huge part of it. Absolutely, I would say it's probably the main part of it. Of course, anything that I will say, of course, is considered to by many to be very controversial, which it's really not in its true nature. But because the elements that are against us are so ideologically possessed about what they believe is the correct narrative, which is manifestly the false one. They're so ideologically possessed about it, which consists essentially of hardcore Islamists and woke regressive leftists. Which these are not very well defined terms, unfortunately. So do understand that I use them with the full knowledge of how, not so uh, meduyak, not so they say meduyak, not so exact or precise terms. I mean, obviously, if I, it's not clear always what these things really mean, but I
hmm,
think you get the idea that these are the general groups that are opposed to
yeah.
Zionism and Israel and increasingly to Jews. in general.
Well,
So,
all I can
well,
say is, well, I hope all that works out, but
yeah, well, that's what we
essentially that's meaningless
that's
in light of
that's the
something that's been going on
that's
for
the
so long. I
that's that's
hope
the
it
3 to 5 thousand year old problem. Yeah, I mean,
three to
this is
five
the all
thousand year old problem.
yeah. Well, I mean, that's the problem with that though. The problem with the problem is that that's kind of the parlance, in fact, of anti-Semites, because they used to frequent, the Nazis, of course, specifically referred to us as the Judenfrage, which it means the Jewish question, uh, and and I mean, obviously, you don't necessarily want to refer to yourself in that way. But it is nonetheless, it's not the Jews that are the question. The question is why anti-Semitism. That's the
Yeah.
actual question from my point of view.
Well,
Uh,
there isn't much I can say about that. So all I can say, like on a personal level, I just mean I hope you're safe. I hope it works out for you personally, because as far as the wider setting, I have no idea really.
yeah, it's very,
And
very
so
difficult.
hope it all works
And
out. How could anybody possibly say what it all working out really means? What do you think?
it's very, very difficult to say because I've lived through this for a very long time, many, many years, and I've read primary sources in Arabic, Hebrew, English, French. There are sources and also in Ottoman Turkish, which I'm not so great at, but I can maybe make out a little bit. The reason that's important is because it's really not possible to understand this conflict without understanding the history. And the grand majority of people who are involved in this whole conflict, whether they're in it directly or they are supporters of one or the other side abroad, for example, most of them do not know anything about the history, or they know very little about it, or they know a lot about their side's narrative of it, which is frequently propaganda. So on one particular side.
Well,
And
maybe we
it's
can try to start to segue into uh, what's happening with Trump lately.
well, that's connected to what's happening here. But before we go into that, I just want to say, give you a quick idea. I mean, I don't want to say too much specifically because, as they say, the eyes of the enemy are watching. And so anything that we post online, I shouldn't be too specific about because it can be used um, by the attacker. Now, this is the thing. So what I'm trying to explain is that this is a very long story. It goes back a very long time. Uh, but in the current iteration, we'll say, I mean, it is true that Israel attacked Iran within the last few days. But the reason it did so was because there was very strong intelligence indicative of Iran going forward with its nuclear program to the point where it was becoming pretty likely, almost for sure, by many, many experts' accounts anyway, that they were nearing weapons grade level uranium um, purification. I can't think of the right word in English, but you get my
Enrichment.
idea. Yeah,
And
enrichment, sure.
yeah.
And it's beyond the amount or the amount of enrichment, the degree of enrichment that you would need for energy purposes, which is what they were claiming,
Mhm.
for peaceful purposes. Well, the thing is that considering what's happened now in the last few days, there's almost no chance that that line is true, that it's for peaceful purposes, because essentially Israel considers it to be a preemptive attack, and that's my view of it. I think that all things considered, when you put in all when you take into account the entire history of what has happened, especially given the fact that Iran has the I should say not this is not the Iranian people, by the way. This is the Islamist regime that took over Iran from the Shah in 1979. Because prior to that, Israel and Iran had decent relations. And then after the Islamic Revolution in 1979 in Iran, that's when they started to say, Mark Bar Israel, Mark Bar America. I can't say I have terrible Persian, but that means, death to Israel and death to America. And that so after that point, they made it very
Hmm.
clear, abundantly obvious to the West and especially to Israel that their goal is to destroy us, absolutely to a crisp. And of course,
Uh,
this this has to do, I mean, obviously there are many people who are going to tell you
man.
otherwise. They're going to say it's about land. They're going to tell you there are so many different takes on it. But a person who truly understands this conflict will understand this is primarily driven by ideology based religion. It has to do primarily with a particular interpretation of Islam, which I'm sad to say, but it's just a fact. It has a severe problem with anti-Semitism, and that's what drives this entire war. Now, you have to understand. Anybody watching this video, they're probably going to blow up the comments with arguments against what I'm saying because this is very unpopular a viewpoint with people who hate us, which is makes sense. Uh, but if you really look at the way that things have happened, if you look at the facts as they really are, rather than the propagandized, inverted facts, which are founded in anti-Semitic canards, you'll understand it's pretty damn clear what the situation really is. Um,
Hmm.
ultimately, I mean, I'm being pretty vague, but I think in further episodes I will start to flesh out what I'm really talking about. So I'm actually doing it on purpose so that you have a
Yeah.
a vague sense of it. So the final part, though, is I just want to let you know, Paul and Pandora, that Israel attacked, but this is in the wake of decades of attacks on us via proxies. Now they're going to tell you that that was a form of resistance against us, but it's really not true. I mean, there's a long story, but ultimately my feeling, my it's not just feeling, it's the fact based orientation is that Israel is the ancestral indigenous homeland of the Jewish people, and it has been for many thousands of years. And we are the only living people that has that long of a connection to this land. Now, there are other people who do have a connection to this land, but it's not as long. And you can argue back and forth about, does it mean you have a bigger claim just because it's an older claim? But that's a discussion for another time. Ultimately, the way that it's actually looked upon is that we believe that this is our ancestral land, but people who are not out to murder us for being Jews or being quote Zionists, they're allowed to live in our state in peace with the same rights as anybody else, which they do. Which again, this is another thing that they'll argue about and say, no, no, it's apartheid. It's well, I don't know what words I'm allowed to say on here without getting demonetized, but probably will be demonetized anyway. But they accuse us of the worst possible crimes against humanity that you can imagine, and it's demonstrably false. But in any case, the point is that we get constantly attacked on that basis that we say this is our homeland. They say no, it's not, or you're not the real Jews, you're imposters. There are all kinds of different explanations as to why we're not supposed to be here. and they're trying to actively remove us. And it's wrapped up in many interpretations of Islam's understanding of us dating back to the time of the Quran. So this is Iran's Shiite interpretation of what's happening here, and they want us dead, nuked. And that's what we
Mm.
discovered. We discovered that they weren't just talking out of their you know what. This very reliable intelligence came in. You have to understand we have people there who were able to verify this, and this is what they were planning. And so it was believed that it was either now or never, because if we did not preempt, then there could have been a nuclear situation here, which I hope has been avoided. But that's what started this entire thing, at least the current iteration. And since then, since the last few days, because Israel has so compromised Iranian infrastructure in the last few days through airstrikes. I mean, this is amazing. It's unbelievable that such a small country would be able to do this, because it was often believed that Iran was much more powerful than it has proven to thus far be, although we don't know the full scale yet. In any case, the last few days, my family and I, for example, and everybody else in Israel has been dealing with extreme barrages of ballistic missiles coming from Iran with gigantic warheads. You know,
Mhm.
we're talking about warheads that are capable of collapsing entire apartment buildings upon impact. And usually they maybe make they cause structural failure to a part of the building, but not the entire thing. But technically, it's possible that they could level up an entire building. But generally, what I've seen so far is that סליחה, אני מסתל, um, sorry, apparently I was bothering somebody in the next room. So basically, what I'm saying is that, can you hear me, by the way?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. So we were under constant barrage from rockets, from missiles, ballistic missiles, and we heard booms, the loudest I've ever heard in my life, and this is after 15 years or more hearing booms. And I have to say, this was one of the first times that I heard a boom that was so loud and so shaking and quaking and quivering that and thundering that I could hear literally the creaking, the twisting, the popping of metal and cement as the ballistic missiles crashed into buildings very, very close by to us. I mean, they missed us by, I can't imagine, more than a few meters. I mean, it was because it was quite close. I
A
mean,
few
I'm not
meters?
sure. Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly how many, but it
Hmm.
was, it's like Russian roulette. Now, what I will say is that I also understand that the people of Iran are also dealing with this, and on a comparable or even worse scale in some cases. I mean, they're dealing with major strikes from us, and it's true that the civilians generally do not deserve it, but the problem is that Israel is absolutely not targeting civilians in Iran, which is policy based and is also demonstrable according to what's actually been done if you believe the facts as they're laid out. But Iran has manifestly targeted civilian areas in response to Israeli preemptive attacks, and that's exactly what happened to us in the last few days. I mean, you're just in your apartment, and then all of a sudden, it's the thing is that you have we have sirens that go off, and it's like ring, 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 and then you rush into the your fortified room, if you have one,
Yeah.
hopefully, and you bring the kids in there, and you're all huddled together in a corner, hoping that the ballistic missile doesn't run into you, and it's like Russian roulette. And like I said, for all the proxies when they sent rockets and missiles at us, these fortified rooms that we have, they can probably withstand, in many cases, even a direct hit from these smaller scale projectiles. But the ones from Iran, which have these much higher, um, much higher, warheads that are much more destructive. It's industrial scale destruction. If they hit your safe room head on, there's a pretty good chance that you will be decimated. Um, so it's not necessarily, but there's a high chance, probably still. So it's really, the fear is huge. But again, this is something that people are experiencing also in Tehran and in other parts of Iran. It's not just us. I'm very aware that both sides are suffering horrifically on the civilian end of things. And the war is not with the Iranian people; it's with the Islamist regime that is bent on the destruction of the Jews in Israel. If they just decided to stop being anti-Semitic, this regime, there would have been no war. So that's the thing. I mean, truly, anti-Semitism drives the entire mechanism because if people just stopped hating Jews, none of this would have happened. None of it. So
Well, I hope
anyway,
everybody can just grow out of this. Personally,
well,
I wish that we could just graduate and
yeah, that's
live
the
in peace somehow. And so I think that I I see great hope with the No Kings protests in America. Um, see what I don't understand why Trump obviously wishes he had the glory of Kim Jong Un or Xi Jinping in those military parades. Some communist dictatorships, but he can't get it. But see, the thing is, as the American president, you should be proud that we don't do that.
yeah,
But
that's actually a
instead,
very that's actually
you're the
another,
leader of the free world. We don't have lock and step proud military parades for the president's birthday. We don't do
yeah.
that in America, and we should be proud that we don't. The leader of the free world should be making them ashamed of themselves for pouring so many resources into their military parades while we don't even have to. But it's
Yeah, it's an
he
interesting.
wants to glorify himself with a military parade, and then we're having a no kings protest. The leader of the free world should be the first to say no kings, and I am certainly not a king. He should not have to wait until he's
Well,
asked,
that's kind of
and you
the
don't
that's
have
kind
to
of
wait until a press conference and the press asks you about the
that's
no
kind of
kings
the George
protest, and
Washington.
then you say,
That's the George Washington approach. Insofar as the myths are true.
yeah, so you don't wait until the press asks you about the no kings protest, and then you say, "Oh, I am not a king." You realize how hard it is for me to get things through. It's like you're the leader of the free world. You should be proud that it's hard for you to get your whims through. we got, we revolted against kings 250 years ago. So why would you complain now that it's hard for you to be a king. No, he really was complaining that he was not a king. He wasn't proud of it. He was complaining that it was hard to get things through. But it's like, but the leader of the free world should always be saying,
I mean,
what
I
I
think it.
want doesn't always go, but the system works. I trust our
You know,
system of governance.
I mean, I think it's pretty in line with his seeming public persona. It doesn't really surprise me. I mean, it's a very difficult thing because I understand the the issues with Trump from an American point of view. I mean, obviously, from the point of view of people who support him and the point of view of people who do not support him, I am very well studied on both points of view. But I think that probably most Americans, but a strong minority, understand that there's also obviously ways of looking at Trump from a foreign point of view, but especially from an Israeli point of view, because um, there are many Israelis who feel that Trump has been a much more pro-Israel president than really anybody since perhaps JFK. Um, you know, Biden and Obama were really not pro-Israel at all, despite frequent claims that they were. Um,
You know what?
Trump
So,
Trump is a bit of a wild card. I mean, I think that he has done things that appear on the surface to help Israel, but he's also done a lot of things that make it seem like he's more in it for the making of a deal aspect of it than
you know
actually
what really
helping.
horrifies me about Trump, though? It's how how much discourse and analysis there has been over what he's doing, especially recently, when in fact the man is 79 years old, should just be off as some retired old grandpa somewhere, sitting on the couch with his grandbabies, dozing off to sleep, having his senior moments, you know. But here he is being analyzed for everything he does, and he has
Those are
real
his senior
power and
moments, though.
sway. And it's like the most
Senior
horrific thing of how much he's
moments.
analyzed is that he
Trump
doesn't
are
think. He
those
himself doesn't
senior
think.
that are asking why he's not a king. Those are his senior moments.
Well, yeah, it's like, you know, these people who analyze him, I kind of question their sanity too, because it's like,
Well, yeah. I
don't
mean, the thing
you
is,
realize the man doesn't think about policies that he's doing? I can see that. I'm not into geopolitics. I'm not
I'm
into
not,
politics at all, but I can
I'm
tell
not
the
certain.
man doesn't
I'm not,
think.
well, I'm not, I'm not certain about that. I think that that's the way it appears, but I'm actually not certain
Well,
that that's actually how
he
he
doesn't.
operates. I think the
Okay.
thing is, I think he appears to. I actually believe personally that he's a lot more strategic than
Well,
people
yeah,
believe he is,
yeah, he's
because I think it's
strategic,
part of his
but
I
he
think it's part of his
doesn't.
mannerisms, his presentation, even the effects of things that he puts into effect or seemingly puts into effect. Um, it does have that signature, such as you're
Right,
saying,
right. I see what you're saying.
um,
He's strategic,
but,
but he
but I think
doesn't
that,
think for the
I
country.
think I think there's something almost Mr. McGee about it. Like if you remember Mr. McGee with that blind fellow,
Remember what?
where he's Mr. McGee like walks around this construction site and like he
Mm.
keeps like he can't see in front of himself, but he's just sort of walking along, happy-go-lucky, and he's many stories above the ground on this construction site. But every time he's about to walk off into the abyss, a crane sort of maneuvers another, what do you call it, beam, like to connect with the beam he's walking on, and then he just walks on that one, and he just keeps by basically not even realizing that he's accidentally being saved
Can you
by
get
the
closer to your
cranes
mic?
coming. Yeah, I'm saying that. Are you familiar with the Mr. McGee cartoon?
Yeah.
Basically it's just a cartoon about incredible serendipity and a person
Oh,
not trying at all to succeed, and yet they kind of do, sort of, or they at least don't die.
well,
And I
this
think that that's
military
kind of
parade, though,
exhibiting.
the military parade was a flop. It didn't go. Trump almost cried, you could tell. See, that's
Well,
what I'm
that's the thing
saying.
that
He has
because you have to
strategized, but he's too old.
But that's the thing though. I'm not sure. I honestly am not sure because I think he's very conniving in a certain way. I think that he is a lot smarter than people make him out to be. And I think that's one of the reasons why he's been able to do what he does. Now, this thing, it doesn't mean I'm not pro Trump. I'm not really a Trump supporter. But on the other hand, I'm nor am I a supporter of other side. Now, the other thing I also believe is I think that Americans, especially, but people around the world, completely overestimate the figurehead quality of the American president. I mean, obviously, the American president is frequently called, the leader of the free world, as you mentioned. They're considered to be the most influential person on earth. All kinds of various titles or unofficial titles and epithets that essentially apotheosize or deify the, you know, the POTUS or POTUS. But the reality is while they do wield quite a bit of power, there are many more checks and balances within the American government, especially systems that are working behind the scenes that are still very traceable, that are behind American and international policy. So this whole idea that you just have Trump alone maneuvering the world, like a marionette master. I mean, it's just completely wrong-headed. But part of this has to do with language too, Paul, because I forget what it's called, but there's a name within literary devices where you refer to a very large system by using a single specific name. Maybe it's metonymy or metony. I don't even know how to pronounce it, but something like that. One of the Greek words. Anyway, the point is that technically, generally, if somebody uses the term Trump correctly to speak about the American government, they mean it, not that Trump alone is driving these policies, but the greater machine that he represents is is determining these policies. But I think the confusion is for the layperson when they hear the word Trump, they really think that it's Trump who is controlling all of what's happening. And they see, and the same is true for many other leaders around the world. Now, there are some cases where it's actually true. I mean, there are some countries where you have actual dictators who more or less alone control the destiny of their country, uh, or dictatorship, other than, how far they may be answerable to foreign interests.
Well, see, I think you're
And
kind of
maybe
supporting what I'm saying, actually. So a lot of his ship could still appear to be sailing for some time after the man is totally gone. I mean, I that's why I get the feeling that he doesn't
wait, are you
think.
talking about Trump or Biden?
Well, Trump, well, now Trump. I get the feeling that Trump is just too old to think or to have the best interests of the country in
I, I,
mind.
I mean, I can't really speculate about that, but
We have
my
less than
point
a
of
minute, by
view.
the way. It's time to sign
Oh
off.
yeah,